So I've grown up with the privilege of having been brought up by a man from the Bay Area who was not shy about telling me that Mama Iberka Pesa. I'm named after his mother. So Iberka Pesa means I'm like money. Okay? I'm good like money. And money is something that is chased, looked for. And when it's found, it's kept well, it is treasured. And so Iberka Pesa. Okay? And so my mom has stunning legs. The first time my dad saw her, he declared, "This is Ogwande fast." Her legs fast. And she's an amazing human being. And I'm privileged to have her take case. I have Ogwande. Ogwande's like my mom's. My mom is called Felgona Ayugi Genga. And Ayugi is given to the child who was born after the death of other children. And so she was a third born child of her mother, and she's the only one who had survived, hence the name Ayugi. And according to my culture, a child who's born after the death of other children before them, they would be taken outside the house. And I mean, imagine a newborn baby would be taken outside the house, and the mother had to go to this child and declare and order the evil spirit out. The evil spirit that took the children before them would be ordered out. And that is, unfortunately, my mom survived that, and that's how she was able to be taken back into the house. Fast forward, my mom has finished high school, and now she's met this dashing young man, Jakanyada, from the Bay Area, who sweeps her off her feet. Long story short, 3 children show up. And then when one of them was about a couple of months old, my mom got a scholarship to go and study in Canada. And I remember she told me she cried all the way to Canada. And I wonder whether she passed out because she was dehydrated. But she cried all the way to Canada because she's left her 3 babies at home. And she cried most of the nights she was there for the 3 years that she was there. But then she was able to come back home. And she got a job at the Kenya Technical Teachers College, which is where she was a teacher. And that is when I, yours truly, showed up for this Badedongo, Doko Sewacho. This Badedongo, this woman who was praised because she had these big arms, which reflected how she was well taken care of in her community. And my dad supported her to go and study and to come back and to even work. And I remember some of the non-negotiables she taught me. The first one was, if you have a goal, go for it, and don't care about what anybody else will say. Imagine my mother leaving 3 children behind and a husband, and you can imagine the kind of things my dad was being told. Uyo ameenda, she's not coming back. But she went, she studied, she came back, and she had a job, and she continued with her goal and her dreams. And I remember her when I was in nursery school. My mom was very elegant, very confident. And we came across the old albums in the house. Back in the day, we used to have physical photos, Gen Z. We used to have physical, they look like cards, but they're pictures of people, right? Cards with people on them, okay? Those are the photos. And we had a book in which those cards with photos would be put in. So I remember seeing my mom when she was in Canada, she used to put on super mini skirts, micro mini skirts. Never mind the fact that here we're being brought up and told we have to be decent and respectful. Mama was wearing platforms, high platforms, and micro mini skirts. So my mom taught me that I have the right to I have a say, and I have to speak up and I have to say what I think and what I feel and what I think I deserve. And so fast forward, I've gone to the University of Nairobi to study journalism, which everybody had warned me against, including my mother, because apparently the narrative was that journalism was for loose women. I don't know what they're supposed to be tight. Anyway, they were loose. Journalism was for loose women who would be misused, and they'll just play things. And my mom had these great plans of me becoming a teacher. So I've gone to the University of Nairobi, and I'm doing journalism. Fast forward, I remember at that time we had an executive from the media, and he told us that none of us would get a job because we would not have work experience. And I wondered, how do you expect us to have work experience and we're doing our degree? So I went and I looked for internship in my second year of university, and I started working so that by the time I cleared campus, I had work experience. So now I'm in the media, I'm in the newsroom, and I've been warned about loose women. And I told myself, Nijikute, catch me dead. I'm going to be the best female business journalist in this country. So get out of my way if you cannot understand that. And I had bold conversations. I was not going to be a statistic. And so all my colleagues, let me tell you, right, you'd be bothered from the security, to the newsroom, your fellow reporters, and then the executives. And then when you leave the newsroom, you're going to cover a function, you're also being bothered there. So it was all around. So the expectation was that you would give in. And I was very clear in my mind that Africa is waiting. I don't have time. So you get out of my way. I'm not going to negotiate with you who I am. And I remember one time I was working in a local media house, and I get a call, and this very giddy male person says, "Guess who?" Ish. And I responded, "Identify yourself in 3 seconds," before I hung up. And then they thought I was joking, and they started laughing. And I counted 1, 2, 3. I hung up. And they called me back and introduced themselves, identified themselves, and they wanted to commend me for my good work and to tell me how they are encouraged to see such young women, blah, 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 blah. And then drinks was mentioned, blah, 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 blah. But Africa is waiting. I don't have time for that. I will not negotiate with you who I am, because I will not live up to the stereotype of whatever it is that you think loose women are. And I remember one day, my mother, Nyaboro Bade Dongo Doko Sewacho, cows testify, right? Called me, and she demanded to know why she was struggling to sleep. And she was struggling to sleep, yeah. I'm married, I've moved out, I'm in my own house, and my mother is calling me and she's demanding to know, why can't I sleep? What are you keeping from me? I am your mother. My mother telling me, I am your mother. And I told her, okay, we've not felt the baby move since last evening. And she asked, what are you going to do next? And I told her, we are going to the hospital to check whether there's a heartbeat. And after that, we'll go to hospital, and then we'll see what happens next. So we went and confirmed that there was no heartbeat. Okay? And this mother of mine, I don't know how she figured this out, but she figured something was wrong, and I was not telling her what was happening. So we confirmed there's no heartbeat with my husband. And then we went to this hospital where our doctor had told us to go to next. And we found my mom there. I found my mom there. And what I appreciate about my mom is she held my hand. I was on the bed. I was losing it. I was crying. I was wailing in all the languages I speak: French, Luo, Sheng. No, we wouldn't say Kiswahili. We are from Bay Area. French. I was wailing because I was broken, because my baby had died. And my mom, I remember she put her hand on my hand and told me to let it out. Don't let anything in, let it all out. And this is contrary to what society tells you. Society tells you, oh, you'll get another one. or you need to be okay so because your husband needs you. Your husband needs you. You've lost a baby, but there's no connection there. Just all these things that society wants to tell you or thinks should tell you when you've lost your child. And I remember I grieved and I had to go into labor. We had to deliver her. And I remember my mom was in hospital, yes, as I've mentioned, and so was my mother-in-law. And I was raging and I was fighting with God because I couldn't believe I was going through labor and I would not hear this baby cry. This baby would not cry because she's not with us anymore. And I expressed myself and I cried with all the colorful words you could think of, in all the languages you could think of. It was the most painful thing I've ever dealt with. There's no formula for grief. You have to deal with it. You have to. When my mom said, let it all out, I was letting it all out. There's no negotiation about grief. There's no formula. You never know. You don't expect it. You never prepare. You never plan for it. So we went through that period. And then I remember 3 months later, we were in church. We were in church, and this pastor was not making sense. He wanted to switch off his mic, but I was fighting with every single thing he was saying. And I couldn't, and I was crying. I couldn't stop crying. And I told my husband, I'm going. Please watch over our daughter. We have an older daughter. So I left her with her dad. And I went out of the church and I called my mom and I asked her where she was. And she said she was at home. And I told her I was coming. And I cried. I cried all the way. I cried in the Uber. I cried outside the Uber. I cried when I said, "Niamh, how much is it?" I cried and I paid and I said, "Thank you so much." And I was crying. I couldn't stop crying. And I knocked the gate and it's my dad who opened. And my dad is not afraid of crying. My dad saw me immediately and asked me, "Where's your friend?" My friend being my husband. Because that is the main suspect there. Why is his daughter crying? "Where is your friend?" And I said, "He's at home." And I'm still crying. And he ushered me into the house and told me, "Come, let's see mom." And I walk into the house, and as we're walking into the house, my mom sees me in my state and asks me, "What's wrong?" "Enango, what is it?" And I told her, "Mom, she was supposed to arrive today." And I could feel her head on my left hand. I never held that baby, but I could feel her. I could smell her. I could. And then I had milk. I had breast milk, you guys. And my mom opened her arms and said, "Come." She ushered me. And I dove into her arms and I wailed. I wailed until I was dizzy. I couldn't breathe and I cried because my baby was gone and I could not do anything about it. I cried until my knees shook. I was sweating. And that is what grief is. So this whole thing for being told that usilie, it's nonsense. Cry, let it out. And my mom allowed me that space to do that. She did not placate me with all this societal nonsense. I cried. And as I was crying, when I had now cooled down and I was spent, she told me about her loss story. My parents lost their firstborn son. They had named him Nick. And she told me it was so painful because she could still see him. She could hear him calling her. She still had breast milk. She would look for him, but she couldn't find him. And that was her grief story. To date, she wonders how old this child would be today. What kind of man would he have become? What kind of values would he have had? And she told me that grief is difficult, it is painful, but it gets easier. And I remember we let go of Eden's body, but her spirit still remains in our heart. And I grieved and I mourned and I dealt with it with the expectation that it will get easier. One day it will get easier, and it has. She would have been probably about 6 years today. She would have my legs. She would be naughty, a lelo, like me, but it's okay. We let go of that. And now the other journey is we have a daughter who was expecting Eden to show up, who had even declared how Eden was going to sleep in her room because she's going to take care of her small sister. And now we are back home and I don't have a baby. My stomach is flat. And this child did not let me see a single tear drop from her eye, but she was very upset. And she asked me, Mom, what happened? And I told her, look, we don't know what happened, but what we know is she's with God and God is taking good care of her. Fast forward a few years later, I'm expecting. Boy child has decided he's going to show up when Corona is here. And before we went to deliver our baby boy, my daughter was uneasy. And this is something that you forget because you're focusing on having this baby and you're focusing on coming out of the hospital with this baby alive. Remember, you have no powers in this. You have no control. It's just you and your maker. And so my daughter called me to her room and asked, and she was very nervous, she was very anxious, and she said, Mom, she wanted to know what happened to Eden. And she wanted to be assured that I will come back home with this baby. And how will we ascertain her that this baby is okay? This baby has landed, this baby is okay. And so I'm in a room and I tell her, Mama, we don't know what happened to Eden. What we know is God is faithful. What we appreciate is God is good. And we have gone through this entire 9-month period with your brother. There's coronavirus. We have to go to hospital to deliver. But what I know is God is faithful. And to put you at ease, your dad is going to be at the hospital with me. And he's going to call you. He's going to video call you and show you your brother so that you know that everything is okay. And I want you to sleep and know that you will be fine. Everything is going to be okay. There are no guarantees in life, but let me tell you, I needed my daughter to be okay. And baby boy landed and alikuwa ameiva. Alikuwa ameiva, courtesy of all the meat I was eating, and he had decided not to look down because he always looks up. He's very confident his head was here. We had to go through CS. And my mom encouraged me by telling me all you need is to get out of that hospital and go home with your child. That's the most important thing. It doesn't matter how this baby arrives or lands. You are leaving that hospital with that child alive and well, and you being alive and well are the most important things. We will not live up to society's expectations. Okay? That's my story about my mother. This is a very strong woman. Belgona Ayugi Genga, Nyaboro Badedongo, Doko Sewacho. Very confident woman. She's a symbol of strength for me. She's a symbol of confidence for me. She is my inspiration. She's my encouragement. According to her name, she wasn't supposed to amount to anything, but she achieved much more than she herself ever expected or imagined of her. And she has taught me that there are things that you will not negotiate. I will not negotiate my integrity. I will not negotiate things like grief. There's no formula for grief. If you know anybody near you who is dealing with grief, your job is just to be present and to support them. Their way, not your way. I have the privilege of having been raised by this strong, beautiful woman. Strong, intelligent woman. Strong, amazing woman who I look up to. Who, when life slaps you left, right, and center, is a constant reminder that I have agency and I can do what I put my mind to and I can achieve it. She is my strength. She's my mom. I want to be like her when I grow up. So far, we have the legs. So far, so good. And I'm eternally grateful to my mother for teaching me that there are things I cannot negotiate as a woman. Thank you.